I'm Sydney Prescott. Of course I have a gun.
Hello everybody, welcome to the newest episode of MAFF'S Movie Show. I'm your host, as always, hopefully not the killer in the new Scream movie. And today we're talking about Scream. The movie's called Scream. It's just the 2022 version. It's the fifth movie that's also the same name as the first movie from 1996, and there's an in-movie joke about this, how new horror movies are just renaming their movies to the original title just to get the most out of marketing and domestic box office, or whatever the hell. But this one is directed by a new directing duo, not Wes Craven, rest in peace, because he passed away a few years back, but taking over the director's chair are Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, who are also known for an entry in VHS and also Ready or Not, which is also a really well-made horror movie starring Samara Weaving. The cycle of murders has begun once again in the fictional town of Woodsboro, and now a new cast of characters have to come together to attempt to stop it, and we also have the classic trio returning in a Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, Gail Weathers, played by Courtney Cox, and of course, Dewey, played by David Arquette. These movies are very much born within the genre of horror, but they're also very well known for having DNA elements such as meta-commentary on the state of the horror genre, as well as a little bit of comedy and self-awareness, and just really just a sense of fun. I was a little apprehensive just because, in my opinion, these movies have been pretty consistent. Having seen all four of the last entries recently, I actually really like all of them in their own ways. Sure, there are weaker elements and weaker movies. The first one's classic by now. At this point, it's been 25 years, and it still holds up as a staple in the horror genre. The second one is a good follow-up that has some very surprising twists and turns, and I think it has a lot of fun with the characters they have in there. The third one is a play on Hollywood, and it literally takes place in Hollywood, and they do a lot of in-Hollywood jokes, which may not be for everybody, but for me, going back on it now, watching it for the first time in a long time, I really liked it. And the fourth one, which is the last one by Wes Craven, is my least favorite, I think, but it's still a really strong entry in the series in how it really captures the essence of what Scream is all about. And then this one, I think the new duo in Olpin and Gillette, they do a really swell job of really incorporating the elements that make Scream Scream, while also implementing new things that really reflect on the past 10 or so years of horror, including what people would call elevated horror, or also an element that people who don't really go on the internet may not really understand much about, which can be an issue and a critique of the movie itself, which I'll get into. But toxic fandom, the idea of fandom being dangerous and ugly and just, as I mentioned, toxic, because that is and has been the case with a lot of beloved franchises, and they very much tackle that head on in this movie. While Scream 2022 does delve harder into the dramatic elements, I think for starters, in my opinion, the dramatic elements do work, and I really am trying my best to not tread on spoilers and really give anything away for anybody who does want to watch this. But the movie does center and focus on Melissa Barrera's character, who you may recognize from In the Heights, which came out earlier last year. The movie centers on her and the dramatic elements surrounding her story and some surprises that define details of her life. I think they did a really good job incorporating those into this movie, creating this something new. One thing involving the past I was dubious about when they first introduced it, but looking back at it retrospectively, I think it adds something that I can appreciate looking back at what horror has gone through over the past 50, 60 years. It was a fun, spooky element that did actually pay off for me by the end of the movie. And in saying that, I think her character arc in this is actually very interesting and it rocks. And fortunately, I think the ripple effect coming off of her character, who I liked, is positive, because I did enjoy all the new characters in this. I really like Jack Quaid in this movie. I like Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding as the twins. I liked Dylan Mignette in this. I also liked Mikey Madison, who I recognize from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and if you've seen that movie, you know she plays somebody who's batshit crazy. I'm truly convinced that the directors of this new Scream movie cast Mikey Madison in this because of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, in her small role in that. And not just because she happened to be in one of the biggest movies of 2019 in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I think there are specific reasons why they cast her in this movie. I'm apparently an idiot, and I'm fine with that, because a lot of my peers seem to have predicted who the killer or the killers were within the first 15-20 minutes of the movie. I was guessing the entire time. I had different... at first, I'm like, okay, it's probably these people. And then that quickly changed. And suddenly, okay, maybe it's this person and these people. Nope, no. It kept changing for me. So at least for me, my experience watching this was that I really didn't see who it was going to be until it got to that moment. And then in that moment, I think they do a really good job of making that third act so bonkers that it really works. And retrospectively looking back at it, because I've seen this movie twice now, there's no real plot holes for me that really distracts from the movie or any details that make me feel like, well, wait, how can he or she or they have been the killer or killers if this happened or this and that happened? I didn't feel like that watching it the second time. I think the movie works just as well going through it that second time. That's important for me too, especially having watched the first three movies over again, is just having a fun, entertaining time just watching these characters and watching them, some of them, get slaughtered. And again, I'm probably an idiot and I'm just easier to please because I'm not hard to satisfy when it comes to these movies. But I do feel like legitimately they do a really good job, Open and Gillette, the directors, of making and crafting a movie that you could go return to, even if you haven't seen the previous movies, and have fun with that while also being surprised along the way if you haven't seen any of these movies, or if you are a veteran to these movies as well. And as mentioned earlier, there is more of an emphasis on drama, especially when it comes to what is really the foundation of this movie in Melissa Barrera's character. But I think that really helps elevate the moments where there are comedic moments and where there are moments where the meta commentary really hits. When we have a character like Jasmine Savoy Brown, who is your Jamie Kennedy of this movie, your horror expert, the person who really knows everything about what happens in horror movies. So she's the one who's really guiding us, the audience, and the other characters along this journey and trying to figure out what the killer or killers are going to do. When you get to those moments that people are looking for from a Scream movie, I think they really work because the drama is elevated. It therefore also elevates the comedy. Some people might also be upset by how what they call legacy characters in this movie are treated. For me, at least, it really worked because they really utilize them in a way that other franchises have utilized their legacy characters, and it therefore goes deeper into that meta tunnel. And I think if people, I don't know, I appreciated the way they utilized them, and it kind of made for a really satisfying ending, at least for me. I think that the directors and the screenwriters found an interesting way of integrating those three into this story without distracting or taking away from the gravity of the characters that they're introducing in this movie too. Also, the kills are brutal, man. There are some brutal kills over the course of this franchise, but they really don't hold back on the blood and the gore in this. And it's not necessarily the amount of gore and the amount of grotesque moments. They're really delicate and careful about when to let the camera hold on a moment when somebody's being massacred, and they really know when to amp up the sound and the music and the editing and to make things feel a lot more intense when it gets really intense. They do a really awesome job, in my opinion, creating those moments that you're going to leave the theater talking about with your friends or family because they're so gruesome. I think one of the biggest critiques for me for Scream looking into it, if I really have to evaluate the process of what went into all of these movies, when you watch the first Scream, I feel like if you're not a film fan, when you're watching like Jamie Kennedy explain the rules of the horror genre, you feel like you're learning something, but you're not being talked down to either. I feel like you're enjoying that because it's part of the movie and it's helping you figure out the whodunit element of the movie, the mystery of who is the killer, who are the killers. In this, I kind of feel like what they tackle head on in terms of the motivation of our killer or killers can deter from somebody's experience, and it kind of can turn them off or alienate them from the movie, therefore creating a polarizing element if they don't understand what that motivation is. And I can't talk about it too much without spoiling the movie. All I'm saying in regards to that is that if you don't go on the internet and you're not really an internet savvy person, there's probably going to be a heavy disconnect between the viewer and the movie of what's going on there. The movie also does tackle the whole screw the fans mentality that some franchises have done, like a Star Wars, The Last Jedi. I love that movie, but I'm just throwing the example out there. And if, depending on how you're going into this, if you have such reverence for the Scream franchise, I think they treat the franchise with respect, and especially they treat Wes Craven, the late Wes Craven, with respect, making this new entry the first directors to handle these movies that isn't Wes. But I can see how somebody could go into this and kind of expect one thing and leaving being very disappointed by what they watched. But again, that's just kind of movies. That's art, especially with a franchise. You kind of, everybody has their own idea or ideas of what they want from their beloved franchises. But I think it's just fun to be able to have another movie and have a couple of artists come in and do their own take on a franchise that's really well known and beloved, and then we get to go and see what their vision was. And I just think, and to see it succeed too, because it's succeeding very much so at the box office right now. I think that's cool to me, and I don't know. That's just how I feel, anyway. But overall, I was a fan of Scream 2022, and without getting into spoilers, I think they do a really good job of navigating and maneuvering through the whodunit mystery, and when we get to that mystery being unveiled, I actually enjoyed the payoff there. The third act in this movie is pretty bonkers. I think Scream 2022 is a good movie. It's a good sequel for Scream, and this franchise remains consistent. If they make a sixth one, I don't know how they're going to tackle the story, to be honest. But if they make a new one sooner than later, and especially if it's with the characters that I'm thinking it's going to be with, given how this one ends, I'm interested. I'm in. I recommend it for anybody who likes Scream or is genuinely curious about this franchise. I think you can go into this having not seen the past ones, but it definitely helps if you've seen the past ones because they commentate on a lot of what happened in the first movie especially. But now I want to know from all you boys and girls, what do you think of the new Scream movie? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you agree with me that it was a good movie and a good sequel, or do you feel differently? Maybe you didn't like it. Maybe you didn't like the direction of it. I just want to know what you think, and let's have a discussion down below. If you enjoyed watching me talk about Scream, and you haven't already, you can subscribe, you could ring the bell so you'll always be notified, you could comment down below, you could share the video with your friends and family, and let's get the party bumping. Let's get it started. 2022, as far as movies are concerned, off to a good start. Thank you again for watching. I appreciate everybody who watches. I appreciate your support as well. I will see you guys next time with a new episode on something movie related. And that's it. Take care. Have a good week. Stay safe. Love y'all. Bye.